This week on Talking Time, we chat about selling watches on eBay, date complications, and having that one watch for life. Hello, and welcome to Talking Time, the podcast where three guys talk about random watch-related things. Some quick introductions. I'm your host Neil, and I'm wearing my Rolex Submariner 1140-60.
I'm John, or JPJ, and I'm wearing a recently acquired IWC Aquatimer 2000.
And I'm Kev, and I'm also wearing a Submariner, but mine's a 16610, the non-ceramic date version. So I believe, JPJ, you're going to talk about selling watches on eBay. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, well, I buy and sell quite a lot, and sometimes some watches sell better on eBay. So I just thought I want to talk about it because I've actually had something up for sale today, and ended up selling very quickly, but to a buyer in Chile. And obviously, for those of you guys that don't know, we're based in Australia, so it's quite a distance, and obviously that causes some concerns just in terms of just not even the cost of shipping, but also given the current global climate, will it get there? How long is it going to take? And you always want to be a little bit cautious of uh, selling stuff far away, because if anything goes wrong, your options for recourse are limited. So I just wanted to talk about that because it's funny enough, one of the people off one of the groups actually messaged me about the watch, because it's on some of the Facebook groups, and asked me for some advice on selling on eBay. And um, you know, and I just wanted to have a chat about how it can be a bit of a minefield, navigating eBay and the restrictions, and as well as making sure that you're covered yourself as a seller, and obviously as a buyer as well, and making sure that you don't get too much risk and there's not too much exposure. So
What?
I thought selling on eBay was a relatively straightforward thing. As a seller, you sell it, you put in some registered posts and with tracking numbers, you buy some insurance, and then that cost is all passed on to the seller, to the buyer, who tops up on whatever their winning bid is, and then off you go. And you as a seller are protected because you have a tracking number. Isn't that how it works?
well, logically you would expect that to be true. However, when things go through the sort of eBay, PayPal, I guess, dispute resolution system, if something was to go wrong, uh, 90% of the time they side with the buyer. And so while having a tracking number gets you some of the way they're protecting yourself, there's definitely other things you can do. So, for example, I always take at least photos, if not video, my packing process. So I show myself putting the watch in the box, packing the box in bubble wrap, and when I get to the post office, I actually video myself putting the package inside the post bag, and in making sure that the address and all that stuff is perfectly visible, and the buyer's details are visible, while before I send it. And I always take a photo of it at the counter as well, just to really protect myself from um, more so cases where someone says, "Oh, you sent me an empty box," or there was no watch in there, or the item was damaged inside.
So do you have
Um,
a preferred sort of like box and packing paper and stuff inside, or just a standard bubble?
well, yeah. Well, if it's a newer watch with box, which is what this one is, generally I will just generously wrap the watch box itself with um, bubble wrap, very generously, like a football, um, before putting it into a satchel. What I generally do is inside where the watch sits, I'd stuff that with some either tissue paper, or, given at the moment tissue paper is fairly limited, um, I would probably stuff it with more bubble wrap. Um, so I think making sure it's packed properly is definitely worthwhile. And even if, like Kevin was saying, even if you have tracking number, until it specifically says delivered, the onus is still on the seller. So it is definitely hard to navigate that if as a first-time seller or if you're not selling regularly.
Well, actually, I do notice that, and because all of us buy lots of stuff from eBay, uh, maybe less than selling, but if you're getting an tracking number that's international, and the moment it gets into Australian borders, that tracking number kind of, for the most part, stops working. It just says entered your country's borders, and you kind of just wait, and might be a couple of weeks before it ever shows up or longer if it gets bounced by customs. So yeah, that's just here receiving the thing. If you're going through different countries with different customs rules or languages, that could be a big hassle. I totally see that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think another tip is if you're selling something really expensive, and I'm probably saying over $5,000 because that's where Australia Post, for example, stops being able to cover you for insurance. You're actually better off to go with someone like DHL because they're a full end-to-end logistics provider, so they don't hand over generally. They don't hand over to local post services for the last mile. Whereas if you go with a government or semi-privatized thing like Australia Post, uh, they always hand over to the local postal service for last mile. So in those cases, Kevin, yeah, once it gets to the country, sometimes the local provider will update Australia Post with their tracking ID, so it still carries through. But with some countries that doesn't happen, so then you do lose visibility. And in those cases, it's particularly dangerous because eBay takes the shipping advice from the tracking number. So if the tracking number never shows delivered, then hypothetically, and you can't prove it, hypothetically the buyer could say that it was a missing item, even if they've got it. And eBay will, in that instance, side 100% with the buyer. So then you have to either go through a rigmarole of basically contacting the postal service, making them contact the local postal service, getting some sort of documentation, say that's been delivered, or if they can't provide that, then you have to go through insurance and claim it, and you know, and while you'll get your money back, it might be 60 days, before you get anything back. So
So I've
I
always
think
wondered about that insurance piece is when you insure something for a certain value, do they cover like market value or the cost of replacement or just...
it's whatever you put on it's whatever you insure it for. So if you say an item's insured for 1,500, um, they would ostensibly pay you back 1,500.
But what if I believe it's worth 2,000?
I believe you
Well,
can do
the
that.
that's yes or no, right? And the only experience I've had with this was I shipped a very expensive custom guitar interstate, and the thing was I had insured it for $3,000. Now it arrived damaged, and I thought it would be like a car insurance where basically it's an agreed value, but they actually said, well, you're covered for $3,000 and you've paid your $3,000 of insurance, but now you have to prove to us it's worth $3,000. So I actually had to get original receipts and a valuation letter from the guys that I sold me the guitar uh, to justify it was $3,000 worth, and then I got my check. So, and that took 90 days or thereabouts. So it could, yeah, you're right. Yeah, but it's definitely not a transparent process, and you definitely don't assume that there is no onus of proof on your side to get that money back.
So it seems like selling stuff online or on eBay specifically, it's a bit of a hassle if things go wrong. Out of all the transactions you guys have done, how many have actually gone wrong? What's the percentage?
I've
Mm.
only had to be honest, I've only had one kind of really, one go wrong, but it didn't really go wrong as such. They got the item and all that kind of stuff. That was all fine, but there was questions about the quality of the item, so they returned it and I refunded them. And the only other one was my mistake. I accidentally listed something with the wrong model number, and so it was like the same thing, but it was just like one digit off or something, and they asked for compensation because it was a slightly different model. So so that was all amicable. I don't think I've really had anything too much go wrong, but the thing is, especially for me, I'm not selling stuff necessarily to make money. So sometimes it's just to cover cost or even lose a little bit. So as you know, as soon as you lose one sort of decently priced item, you know, say $1,000 or something, that's a lot of
That
that's a
wipes
big
out your
impact.
capital.
You know? Yeah, that's right. So that's a big impact out of all the sales that you've ever done. So if you average it out, you only need one sort of decent sized loss for it to be a bit of a crapshoot. You know, just generally. So I try and take as many precautions as possible. So yeah, I mean, it'd be good to sort of see, if the listeners, if anyone has any opinions around, selling stuff overseas, particularly into a country that you're not necessarily familiar with. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Chile, obviously. I don't know very well, but obviously it's a country that isn't, it's not really regular that you would send stuff to. So it'd be interesting to know what people think about that, actually. What about you, Kevin? Anything gone wrong? You've sold a fair few things.
Well, actually, I was going to say I hardly ever sell anything, and so but I have had issues with on the buying side. I bought an old vintage Tissot Sea Star, and the package arrived with the envelope, a padded envelope that was ripped open, and all they did was deliver this empty envelope from Venezuela, I think. And I took the photos. I sent my eBay claim through. They gave me my money back. And the guy said, "Look, I'm really sorry about this. I'll go claim insurance. No harm, no foul." So everything was good. And about 4 months later, I get a DHL letter with a watch inside. So this thing had clearly fallen out somewhere between Venezuela and here and been rattled around, and they've sent it in this unpadded envelope.
Did it work?
It didn't work. But this watch arrived. So I wrote the guy an email saying, "Hey, this thing arrived. I'll send you some money back." He goes, "You know what? It's been so long. The insurance company has given me my money back. Just enjoy your free watch." But it took about what I bought the thing for just to get it running again. So
Do you still have it?
All these stories you boys
I
are
do still
telling
have
us.
it.
All these stories you boys are telling us. It's giving me the, what do you call it, desire to avoid all that and just stick to traditional face to face.
Well, that's a topic for another day. But remember the recent, a couple of months ago, there were all these cases of people getting robbed with these watch deals for face-to-face things. And even when you bought your recent piece, Neil, we all joined you for lunch to make sure that you weren't stabbed.
My bodyguards.
By a friend. That's right. Well, having said that, I was just there for the food. I think JPJ's the bodyguard.
Plus, I think if you sort of look at value versus risk as well, you got to just be mindful that sometimes selling overseas can net you a better amount, particularly if your local dollar isn't doing well. So I think this is sort of what happened in this instance. I'm hoping that a really nice watch collector in Chile, saw a bargain because their money may be stronger than what ours is currently, and jumped on it. So I'm gonna live in hope that that not everyone is up to some mischief. So
I think just before we leave the topic, can I just point out, if we just buy carefully and not have to sell, this whole issue becomes null and void, right?
I'll fight you, Kevin. I'll fight you.
That's all right. And you also shouldn't do that because it ties up valuable capital required for living in watches that you can't eat.
So moving on to our next topic, which is going to be
I believe you're talking about date versus no date complications, right, Neil?
That's right. While most people don't really give it any real thought when they pick up their next piece, I myself personally dislike the date window. It's just, to me, the dateless watch is cleaner, it's more simple, it's symmetrical. And you think about all the classic watches in the past, your iconic designs like your original Submariner, the Moonwatch, the Reversos, the Santos. None of these had a date. So to me, the modern date window just clouds the dial, and it's not something I like.
What about a date subdial? Some of the I think the Oris pointer date uses that those old Omegas with the triple date. That's not exactly a window, so it doesn't cut out of the dial and disrupt the symmetry of it. But
Yeah, look,
it's still
in
there.
principle, I'm fine with a date pointer date. All right, like you said, the Oris pointer date is a clean design. The Patek
Yep.
annual calendar that's
Yeah.
a nice clean design as well. But yeah, in general, just a date wheel in a separate window where it's at 3 o'clock, or worse still, at the 4.5 um, location. To me, that's just
Hmm.
it's just not clean.
What about the
See,
functional benefits of having date?
When was the last time you looked at your date window? You know,
Well,
in the modern
I-
age of mobile phones and you know, you got to work, you turn on your computer, bang, the date's right there in the bottom right hand corner.
But then the same
but
question we asked, how often do you look at your watch for the time?
you
Yeah,
look at your
correct.
watch. You look at your watch to admire the fancy bit of male jewelry that you have on your wrist. Right?
Correct. And therefore it comes back down to design and beauty. Right. And to me the date window destroys that.
Sadly, I said that tongue in cheek, Neil, but you know, I actually do use the date complication lots and lots and lots. Must be just the kind of older school workflow that I have at work, but I'm always scribbling on dates or typing dates up, and just a flick of the wrist, it's there. But I do
Well,
understand that
let me
it
ask
does
you
break
this.
the
Right. Let me
aesthetics.
there there's been many opportunities where I've taken a look at the watch and I've thought, hey, if they just remove that date, it's going to be a much better watch in general. Have you ever looked at a non-date watch and said, hey, I wish this had a date?
Yes, but on the flip side, and I'll have that conversation as well, but then I will also say, but I can't buy it because from a practical daily perspective, I can't use that. There's many a time, and I do own non-date watches, like your Speedy, your uh, Tudor Blue, Buchera Blue, and they're fantastic, they're great, they're pretty, but every time I wear them to work, it annoys me that I can't get to the date quickly. And then it gets to a point where the next purchase I get, I'll go, oh, am I wearing this for practical purposes, or is this the fancy bit of jewelry? And I'll make that decision then. You know, if I'm buying a watch because it's pretty, then that's fine. But if I want it for a daily tool, then I must have a date on mine. It's kind of a thing for me now.
Hmm. Interesting.
So
JPJ, have you got any thoughts?
here's an even more unpopular opinion, Neil. I'll raise you the date window on a no date watch, and I'll say that I only like it when they've got a Cyclops.
Ooh.
because because for me a tiny little date, the tiny little window with my eyesight is basically useless. Yeah, and the main time I use a date is if I'm filling out a form or I'm signing something or signing for something, and it needs a date. And at that point, it's sort of, you may not have your phone on you, if it's a posted delivery something or whatever it is, and they need a date. So it's actually useful to me, but I can't read them when there's no Cyclops. So I actually quite enjoy, either whether it's the Rolex implementation or the Seiko implementation, or um, some of the brands that have the internal inverted Cyclops on the inside that still gives you the magnification, but it's not on the surface of the crystal. Anything that magnifies the date or a grand date is actually what would work for me the best. So,
So grand
and
dates, usually you find them at that 12 o'clock position, right? Then you still maintain that symmetry. I've got no issue with that.
so what if it's at the 6 o'clock? Are you okay with that?
I'm generally okay with that as well.
So you
Ooh,
just don't like it at the
what
3 or
about
4:30?
those?
Correct.
What if it's a color matched date wheel like Seaforth Hasworth thing?
See, that was my other issue with date wheels is well, I wouldn't say most, but plenty of times you have mismatched colors between the date wheel and the dial. And I think that's a poor design choice. Now,
I think it's contrast for the sake of contrast. So your eyes zoom out, there's the date.
yeah, could be, but to me, it sticks out. Right. And the final problem I have with the date is when you have a collection of watches, it's a pain in the ass to set them.
So just buy perpetual calendars, Neil. That solves your problem.
they're
only buy
equally
perpetual
painful
calendars.
to set.
No, the key is to have well, once you go perpetual calendars or any of those fancy complications that are difficult to set, I think that's the time when you get winders. And generally, I'm not a fan of winders. It's a whole topic for another discussion. But you know, if you're going to be sitting there twiddling whether this was a leap year or not, and when was the last time you wore this thing, just keep it running.
Okay,
So
final question about date wheels, just because we're talking about it. Do you prefer a date wheel where the indice at the date is cut out, so it's only a little bit, or missing, or still a full indice and the date wheel's pushed in?
Ooh.
that depends on the overall design of the watch, right? And for me, that date wheel then has to be at your 6 or 12 o'clock position.
Hmm.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I'm with Neil though. It really depends on whether they've managed to pull it off the general feel and vibe of the watch. Like Omega's done with their current Seamasters. It's just I think they're all circular uh, markers, aren't they? And then the
Yes.
date wheels cutouts are square, so it kind of ruins the vibe a bit for me.
Good point. Okay, okay.
So the final topic of the show is going to have it's going to be about having that one watch for life. So Kev, why don't you kick us off with your thoughts on this?
Well, look, this one's more philosophical thing, but if you had one watch for life to pick from, and as a daily, as a anything, and this will be wearing it to all the events that you feel for the rest of your life. What could they possibly be? What would contenders be? And this was just in the current situation. I found myself just keeping one watch on instead of going to the largest collection and picking one for every other workday. I've just been lazy and just kept the same watch on for the last week. And it happened to be the non-ceramic sub date that I have on now. And it got me thinking, you know what, this thing ticks all the boxes that I think goes into a watch collector's buying.
So maybe let's take a step back. What are these boxes? What are the boxes that need to be ticked?
Well, first of all, there's the function, and it goes back to whether you think it's a piece of jewelry or a tool. In my case, I like it to be both. So it's got shiny aspects on it on the design, but it's got the date, which I like. There's non-date versions for those that like the symmetry, like yourself, Neil. There is that luxury aspect of it. Rolex is, at the end of the day, the big name that none of us can get away from, and it still feels like an accomplishment every time I buy a Rolex. I don't do it that often, so it has that kind of luxury aspect to it. And at the end of the day, it's bulletproof. My model, my one is coming on 20 years old, and it's still as robust as the day that came out of the factory. There's very minimal in terms of servicing that needs to go into it. And I could wear this, in rain, through mud. I was mowing the lawn with it. But yeah, it's just fairly bulletproof. And mind you, it doesn't need to be expensive. Everything I've said about this piece could be equally applied to Seiko SKX or Seiko Turtle, except that luxury portion. But that's not a requirement for everyone. For me, this is a fantastic one watch for life.
How about you, JPJ? What do you think your one watch for life would be?
I don't know. I think this is a bit of a hard question because I'm not sure if it's actually humanly possible for me to actually have just that one watch for life. But if I did have to think about it, I guess I'd have a question: is this a watch for life that I couldn't like? Is it a watch for life because there are no more watches ever anymore, and that's the only one that I can get, or is it a case of like I could never sell it? Like, what's the or is it just like
I
into the
think
wearability?
when I thought of the topic, it was just if you could pick a model that would be suitable to be
Okay.
to run you through everything from now until we go.
I would say Submariner actually as well. I think, but I would go the ceramic sub, and I'd probably go the no date one like Neil was wearing at the moment, because I think it ticks a lot of boxes. It's a dressy diver, so you could easily dress it up, and because it's a Rolex, let's be honest, no one's gonna look down on you if you're in a suit and a shirt wearing a Submariner. I mean, watch people may think, oh, it's a diver, but most people will be like, oh, well, still Rolex, and it still looks good with most clothing, and and it's fairly robust. Servicing is probably not cheap, but isn't astronomically expensive like some of the other brands. It's still relatively obtainable. I think it shows a bit of class, and a bit of watch interest without being over the top. And it's legible, and there's no date, so you'll never have to worry about that, right, Neil?
That's it. For me, and I think about what is the criteria for a one watch for life. For me, it has to be versatile, so it has to be both sporty and dressy, suit those both occasions. It's got to be durable, so it can withstand any punishment you throw at it. The versatility also means you could accessorize it with new straps and change the look dynamically, so you won't get bored. So, and it's got to be a respected brand, of which Rolex is, and unsurprisingly, my 1140-60 is going to be my one watch for life. So I hate to be the boring guy, but we've all sort of congregated around the same sort of watch.
All right.
And this wasn't rehearsed, fellas. Like, this was not rehearsed at all. We didn't talk about this before we jumped on. It literally is something that has just been decided by everyone, I think. So
okay. Well, look, since it's the last topic for tonight, what if we took that one out? All right. Let if it couldn't be a sub.
Well, why don't we make it more interesting and say no Rolex?
If it couldn't be a Rolex, no Rolex. How about that? In which case, then, right now, it might be, jeez, hard to take my own advice now. Seiko Turtle, or the smaller version. If you have a smaller wrist, it's invincible. It completely flies under the radar. It's going to function from now to eternity. I've bought SKXs from the 80s that have never been opened since the factory, and they still kept fantastic time. So, as far as reliability goes, there's something to be said about the old humble base model Seiko divers. And the thing about wearing a sub or a nice watch as well is that, one watch for life, I've done some renovations in my day, and when I was wearing my SKXs or Turtles, I was just hammering away with masonry drills at walls, and didn't even think twice about taking it off. But I'd certainly think about taking the sub off if I was doing that again. So, what about you, Neil?
For me, no Rolex. Then my heart goes to Grand Seiko, and out of all the Grand Seikos, there's one that's king. It's the 44GS, right? The SBGW 047. That watch, to my eye, is completely perfect. It is symmetrical. It's got the angular case shape. It's got that Zaratsu polishing. It's got the stick hands. It's a beautiful blend of sport and dress. Pity that there's no metal bracelet, but on that leather bracelet, just looks fantastic. That would be my pick. And JPJ, yourself?
I am struggling. I honestly, it would have to be some sort of diver for me, because even though I can't swim like at all, I enjoy the versatility of not having to worry about the water resistance and going in the shower and whatever else. However, I think I'd be remiss to not say the Omega Speedmaster Professional. Now, I know it's not really a diver. I mean, not a diver at all. It looks at water and gets damaged. But I think it's very versatile. It's definitely another one you can dress up, dress down. It's relatively robust, I guess, because there's no rotors. It's manual wind, so there's nothing really inside to get too, messed up and clogged up. Obviously it's good enough to go to the moon, so it must be good enough for my fairly boring pedestrian middle-class life. But what I do like about it is the fact that even though it's legible, it still has a bit of visual interest, with the subdials and the the chronograph. So I think the Mega Speedmaster Professional Hesselite, the plain Jane model, would be mine. So on that note, I think that probably brings our podcast to an end. I hope everyone enjoyed listening. And those of you that do listen, please leave us a comment with some ideas for the next podcast and some topics. And everyone stay safe amidst the strange times that we've got going on out in the world right now. And you can always find some joy in your watch box. Thank you,
That's
everyone.
right.
Yep. See you guys.
See you guys. This week on Talking Time, we chat about selling watches on eBay.